Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Strategic Command World at War, a turn-based World War II strategy game that lets you play through the Second World War in 2-week increments as either the Allies or the Axis. This is episode, I think, 29, but we're getting our way toward episode 30, and it is April of 1942. The war is complicated. We are in a European campaign. We have captured a bunch of cities in Spain this last turn, in this last episode. We captured Badajoz, we captured Cadiz, Salamanca, and La Corona up in the north. And we are driving on Madrid and threatening the very existence of Spain because Spain has joined the Axis powers. However, we are cut off from the Mediterranean because the Spanish forces also do occupy the port of Gibraltar, or the base of Gibraltar, and that's preventing us bringing our victorious North African armies over to the Spanish coast. We do have some troops on transports. We're going to be landing some British troops at either Valencia, Murcia, or Barcelona in the next turn or two, with the hope that we can open a second front in Spain, of all places. So a two-front war in Spain. We have some tanks on transports, and then we have some special forces troops on landing craft. So if we can land the troops, take the port of Barcelona, then land the tanks, we might be able to cut off the enemy in the rear, take Burgos, the alternate capital, and then take Madrid and knock Spain out of the war, then invading and liberating France from the south rather than the risky cross-channel invasion. This is all very important from a timing perspective because the Vichy French are not in the war yet. The other parts of North Africa are still out of the war, and the Germans are advancing very rapidly on the Russian front. I kind of expect a full-blown breakthrough and an overrun of our forces in the south here near Stalingrad at the end of this next turn. Potentially some serious attrition in the Moscow front, although that's unlikely to be completely broken through this turn. Although they've got enough tanks to do it, I think we've bloodied 2 of their armored units enough so that this armored fist of theirs may pause a turn to reinforce the 5th Panzer tanks and the 21st Panzer tanks, and maybe even the 4th Panzer tanks. So it might get a little bit of a breather before the summer offensive on Moscow. Meanwhile, Leningrad is vulnerable as well, but the Germans have primarily deployed infantry there, and the terrain there does work to our advantage, although we are moving our troops around quite a bit, and so they're not very well dug in. That's all ongoing while the Pacific War is heavily underway. The Japanese have landed troops in our rear via an airborne assault. They're trying to get in behind the Changsha line. We just destroyed a Japanese corps near Henan, but the Japanese are really finally putting their air power to good use on the Chinese front, and they're going to break through and probably overwhelm and defeat China in the next year or so, if even that long. Meanwhile, the Philippines has fallen. All of the historical invasion islands have fallen. Even Guadalcanal has fallen to the Japanese. They haven't taken Port Moresby. We did just land some reinforcements. The 1st Australian Corps was landed at Port Moresby. And our fleet in the Pacific is sort of resting and refitting in and around Pearl Harbor. We did fight a major naval battle off the coast of Pearl Harbor and sank 2 Japanese fleet carriers and crippled a 3rd. So that was beneficial for us. But overall, the war's not going great. The Spanish front and the North African front represent the sort of high watermark for us at the moment. But overall, things are a little bit challenging. And that's where we find ourselves in the spring of 1942, well ahead of schedule in some places, well behind schedule in other places. That's the situation, and I'm actually going to I think we'll bring our carriers. I don't know if we want to bring our carriers into the Bay of Biscay quite yet. So that's where we find ourselves right now, and I think we'll go from there. I want to make sure I don't invite a German cross-channel invasion in Britain because we have stripped most of our land forces out of Britain to reinforce the assault in Spain. I'm hoping the Germans pull major reinforcements out of Russia and reinforce Spain, but not until after Spain falls. I would love to, get into France, take Bordeaux, maybe be driving on Paris, and then completely halt the German offensive in Russia as they have to shift reinforcements to our front. But we'll see. They are building a defensive line in Italy, presuming an invasion of Italy, although we've gone to Spain instead. The entry of Spain and Portugal into the war has been very much in our favor to this point. With that being said, let's go ahead and end the turn and see what the AI has in store for us as we move forward into May of 1942. Red Army Headquarters. General Anders has turned down our offer to evacuate thousands of Polish soldiers from the USSR. It would therefore seem appropriate that we enlist these men into the Red Army to form into a Polish corps at Kurbyshev. This could be done for a cost of 75 MPPs at 25 per turn for 3 turns. The Polish Corps will then deploy at strength 8 with no experience due to poor health of the men and will require upgrading. Would you like to form them as an integral part of the Red Army? Yes. I mean, we should definitely do this. We need as many men as we can get in Russia. So you can see they deploy there in the alternate capital in the rear there. Meanwhile, Mao Zedong continues to be concerned about the Japanese advance in China. Good news for us, though. It looks like the communists are preparing for war on the Chinese front, so hopefully we get some communist reinforcements. Meanwhile, mass demonstrations through Vichy, France proclaim their support for Charles de Gaulle. Making progress in ground attack weapons for the U.S. Kind of blitzed through the income report there. I didn't quite see what we got. Okay, so it looks like the snow has stopped on the Moscow front. It is still muddy by the looks of it. Meanwhile, also in Singapore, the Japanese have not yet broken through there. We've actually sort of brought troops on both sides of the front line at Singapore. So that is working to our advantage. A whole bunch of German subs are attacking the American and British fleets off the coast of Spain. Oh no! There goes a battleship! Holy God, they have a lot of submarines. You'd think the Germans might pause for some reinforcements on the Moscow front, or even in the south near... okay, so they are reinforcing those 2 armored units. They did reinforce both of those. They moved one of the other armored units, and apparently they didn't attack with it. So I think what is the strongest German armored thrust on the Moscow front has been neutered for at least a turn. So that's good to see. Japanese carriers operating in the Gulf of Siam, but it's rainy there, so they can't really do anything. Meanwhile, they're attempting to bomb Changsha. They did succeed, but they did get disrupted a little bit by our fighters. A second raid came through unhindered. Tactical bombers in the north nearly... Oh, never mind. They completely destroyed a corps near Ningxia up in the north, so our northern flank is exposed. The only saving grace for us there is that it is very much difficult terrain to advance rapidly through. German Stukas hitting our armor very heavily. We have quite a few fighters in and around Moscow. They're not upgraded very much, but they at least have a chance to intercept German bombers and disrupt them a little bit. You can see there we are inflicting some casualties on them, and I'm assuming that's making their bombing raids a little bit less effective. We have no such defense in the south of Russia. You can see that heavy tank unit of ours near Volshavgraya is just getting decimated. I really need to pull them back, but I'm worried the Germans will attack it before we can do so. I just don't have enough Russian troops here. All right, so German armor is attacking in the north, apparently. So 2 armored units there attacked, and they did advance. I thought they reinforced one of those. Did they reinforce an attack on the same turn? And there goes that heavy tank in the south. Rostov will fall there. They've broken through in the south. Whether they exploit the breakthrough this turn or not remains to be seen. But in the Caucasus, there's a giant gap in the south in Rostov. They've also broken through on the northern flank of the Caucasus. And they're attacking on the Moscow front as well. They're going to take Vizima this turn. Or at least destroy the unit that was in Vizima. Attacking to the south near Cyan. They didn't quite destroy that headquarters unit there, so there's a little bit of a delay there. Okay, they took Rostov with Italian troops, then they destroyed the cruiser there. So they've broken through to the south of Moscow here. And they've also driven through to Salisk, so they've cut the troops off in the south there. The troops that were blocking the advance across from Kerch. They're also trying to flank the river there on the Leningrad front to get around our defensive line there, moving through the forests. This has been a very rough turn for the Russian front. Japanese paratroopers in China suffering attrition casualties. The communists are joining the war in China, so hopefully that gives us something to stem the tide in the north. The problem is the Chinese forces, I haven't developed anti-aircraft, so we lose the light cruiser Krim. We lose the 3rd Corps, the 6th Corps, the Brest-Litovsk garrison, the 1st Shock heavy tanks, the 1st Guards heavy tanks, the 4th Corps of China, and the Changsha's damage from bombing. The British battlecruiser Renown is sunk by German submarines. National morale falls with the loss of Rostov. Communist China joins the war. Okay, the Germans have a lot of garrison troops throughout Europe as well. Someone mentioned something in the last video about potentially there being partisans in Spain, so I'll have to take a look at that. Meanwhile, we get the Massachusetts battleship, we get a mechanized force, and we get strategic bombers for the U.S. So the Strat bombers deploy in Pittsburgh, the Massachusetts. I'd prefer to deploy in the Pacific, so it will. We also get a headquarters unit in Charleston, South Carolina, so that'll be nice. We can send them across the channel. And then we're going to send the mechanized troops and the 3rd Army all across as well. I can't place them in a base, apparently, so they're going to be a month behind. Meanwhile, Russia gets a bunch of new troops. We're going to wait to deploy the Russian stuff for a little bit. India, the headquarters unit, there's no reason not to deploy that right away. We need to get that as close to the front as we can. But the USSR stuff, we'll wait till the end of the turn. Actually, we have 2 headquarters units now in... So maybe this headquarter, the headquarter unit here in Chittagong could... I mean, I'd like to move British forces into China and try and reinforce the Chinese with British units. The Communist Chinese... Okay. Alright, so we're actually going to move one of these guys north. They're going to take a penalty by force marching. Pretty big morale hit. Okay. Alright, we'll see if those reinforcements help. They should at least stem the tide for a turn or two. Alright, we'll attack these tactical bombers here with our ground troops because anything we can do to inflict casualties on them, we need to do. We'll attack this armor here. Nice. That was a good result. Got it! Nice! Alright, we just knocked out that that armored unit there. Actually, we're going to move this course south. We're going to move these guys north into Changsha. I know it gets rid of their entrenchment, but we just destroyed an armored unit. We still have these airborne troops, I think, kind of cut off with no supply, nowhere to go, so hopefully they just kind of starve. They're going to probably have to pull these air units back, or they're going to get destroyed by my ground attack. I'll reinforce those tanks. Reinforce these troops. These guys are just kind of cannon fodder, these engineers, just hopefully to buy a little bit of time. I really need more Chinese forces. I just don't have the money to buy more. Okay. I don't know why I moved them and then moved them back, but I did. Alright, so that was some success in China. We destroyed an armored unit. The entry of the communists at least plugs the gap in the north for a turn. I'm not going to reinforce that fighter unit for the time being. These Japanese troops have basically no supply. reinforce these British troops. All right. Let's pull these naval assets back from Rangoon. There's no reason to have them up front there and exposed for the time being. Let's also send some of these special forces. I'm going to try and get as many British units into China as I can. I think that needs to be the strategy. British and Indian units into China. So we've already got 2 units in. We've got, I think these special forces and this army are going to go in as well as an Indian headquarters. This British headquarters unit here in the south will support this sort of 5-unit force in Singapore, near Singapore. Hopefully we can destroy the Japanese there, and then maybe we can, I don't know, get into Indochina. Although Indochina hasn't joined the war. They're neutral at the moment. So I'm not sure what else I would do with all those troops out that way. I have garrison units of the British that I could definitely send to Europe if there are going to be partisans. I guess it does look like there could be Spanish partisans that we have to worry about. Although, this seems to indicate no. I don't know if they're pro-Allied partisans or not. All right, so we took the secondary capital at Burgos in Spain. Meanwhile, we've surrounded Madrid. Trying to get rid of their entrenchments here. So Madrid is surrounded. And we've begun the assault on Gibraltar as well. American destroyers will move up here to try and go after these German subs. And get these. Wait, why is Vigo not an allied port at this stage? I don't understand that. I don't feel like I should be taking damage to these subs or to these ships. I'm so confused. I need them in port to be somewhat protected. I suppose our carriers can come south here, although it looks like it's raining all over, so that would probably be ill-advised for the time being. So we drop these Canadian troops in. The Americans are... I guess we could move them south to Madrid to try and assist. Alright, we finally did a little bit of damage there. Although I did just abandon the secondary capital there. What about these these troops here? They can go land at Barcelona. So we'll do that. Suffer landing casualties, but that's fine. Meanwhile, we can move these armored up here to Barcelona as well. Oh, shit. Apparently they can't unload the same turn. So we've taken Barcelona, at least for now, with these Special Forces troops. So I imagine the Spanish supply situation is going to be pretty dire. The troops in Madrid might get a little bit. Gibraltar is a secondary supply, so they could get a little bit there too. But, yeah, you would think the Germans would need to massively reinforce Spain now if they want to have any hope of saving their ally, but I guess they don't care. And maybe Spain doesn't trigger anything. I don't know. The British still have some money. What do I want to spend it on? Why can't the Free French pull from their own balance here? I'll start flooding more troops out of North Africa into Spain as soon as I can, probably starting next turn, assuming I hold Barcelona. I didn't mean to move that troop out of Barcelona, but they did. Reinforce our fighters here. Wasn't really what I wanted to use my money doing. I can't... Oh, I can move coastal. Okay, so we'll move these coastal bombers down here to Porto so they can be used against the U-boats as soon as the weather clears. That'll be useful. Okay. I think we'll use some of the British money to reinforce these guys. I moved the units in Africa around to different ports, so didn't quite have the ability to put them on ships yet. Actually, so they're adjacent. They're adjacent. See, the circle with the line through it makes me think they won't actually rise up. I'm wondering if those are like pro-Allied partisans. If Spain joins, maybe those are anti-fascist partisans. Like, are there pro-fascist partisans in the game, or are they all, you know, on our side? Okay, we'll reinforce these guys. Of course, the weather's bad for us, so they can use their Air Force, but we can't use ours. Okay. Interestingly enough, the supply on the Leningrad front is really bad for the Germans, so that's working in our favor. These guys are dug in at level 3. I don't really want to move them. They're dug in at 2. I don't really want to move them either. Alright, so new... Actually, don't forget the southern front. Oh my god, they got into Salisk behind us? Well, shit. Alright, so we have troops in Stalingrad. It's a national morale objective. Alright, let's place new units. So we're going to place a garrison here to just eat an attack or two. A couple of garrison units that we could place. We got a whole bunch of new core units as well. We just need to kind of think through where the best place is for these guys. Again, it's about building depth. Okay. Alright, so I think that's where we'll deploy the Soviet forces. I do think I'm going to pull the troops, these guys, back a little bit. Towards Stalingrad. Well, we could just flank down here. I'm almost wondering if I'm better off holding my current position. I don't know how much of an impact losing... These guys look like they're worth a lot of money in the Caucasus, so I'm not sure how bad of an idea it is to pull back. But I'm gonna do it anyway. Trying to preserve as many of my troops as I can. Kubajev, let's go ahead and upgrade this corps. Reinforce these guys. They lose a little bit of efficiency, I think, if we do that. They're already building forts there. We'll reinforce our fighters to try and help a little bit against the Germans there. Research-wise, we've got a little bit of money left over for the Soviets. Research-wise, we're already researching infantry weapon level 2 and advanced tank level 2. It's taking a little bit, but we are working on it. Same for infantry warfare. Armored warfare, I think, will be important. I probably should research advanced fighters. So spend a little bit of money doing that. Meanwhile, the other remaining 276 or so, I think we probably build... more replacement corps and garrisons, maybe? Meanwhile, I think we have a couple of shock armies that are coming at some point, or maybe I didn't buy the shock armies. But we'll have more reinforcements in a turn, I think. India, meanwhile, has some extra money, too. So we're going to build a level 2 Indian army, I think. Unless we want to go with a level 2 tank. Trying to see if that would be worthwhile. I don't have level 2 fighters or anything, so that doesn't help. What about research for the Indian Air Force or anything like that? Is that... I've already got level 2 infantry weapons. It's probably not worth it. We probably are just better off going manpower heavy. Buying another Indian army. So we'll get those in September. They're going to take a while to build. Meanwhile, the Americans. We've done the Spanish stuff, but we can't move the new units that we just placed, but we did detect an enemy formation down here, an enemy battleship. So I am actually going to go forward here. It looks like the weather is cooperating. It is sunny. Oh my god. Poor American destroyer. The Japanese fleet, it looks to be based out of Kwajalein. And so I think what we're going to do is we're going to go for the battleships. That's what we're going to focus on. So I'm going to fly this carrier out here, or drive or fly. I'm going to sail this carrier out here. We're going to go for the enemy battleships. You can see here we took 4 damage on our air wing, but we did do 4 damage to the battleship itself. We took 2 more damage to the air wing. We are doing some damage to the enemy air wing. Got it! Nice. So we destroyed that enemy battleship. We'll go for that battleship now. I don't know why they sail toward you when they're taking damage. Got him! 2 enemy battleships down. Okay. So I think we'll sell this battleship out here. Finish off that enemy battleship. So that's 3 enemy battleships sunk so far this turn. And there's an enemy carrier there that's exposed. So we'll go engage the carrier with the surface forces. The screening battleships are gone now, and so we'll go for the carrier itself. Got it too! Nice! So there's an enemy carrier here that's air wing is shot up pretty bad. That is still around. Shit. Enemy heavy cruiser. We might lose this cruiser of ours, but I was trying to do a little bit of recon to see what else might be out there. It doesn't look like there's a ton. Now, I can't attack these guys effectively because they're in port. So keep that in mind. Same for the cruiser there. There also is a light enemy cruiser here. So we may lose some of our lighter support ships trying to get intel on these enemy ships. But here's the good news. Their air wing is only 4, so the carrier might get a knock-in and knock out one of our ships. The enemy surface vessels could come forward and try and go for us. But I honestly think that this could be decisive because either they can retreat their carrier, or if they keep the carrier around to fight, our carriers can bomb these guys in harbor. You know, just because they're in the port doesn't mean we can't hit them with air. So this is a pretty decisive turn navally. Now, we do know they have at least 2 carriers in the Western Pacific, so this isn't necessarily the end of the naval war by any means, but it is a start. I'll leave these guys in Port Moresby to entrench, and that is a very good result. We also have 2 more battleships that are arriving, so we're going to sprint them out to Pearl, and so if more enemy ships do show up, that'll be good for us. If we take a look at the naval strength, the Japanese are down to 16. The Germans have 18 naval units. The Americans have 21 naval units. The British have 30. So we know they have a carrier out here. We know they have a battleship out this direction. We've got a destroyer. There's the battleship. There's a cruise. So the bulk, it looks like, other than the ships we've already destroyed and detected, the bulk of the rest of the Japanese fleet is in and around Singapore, which means it shouldn't be able to go east to support. There's also a battleship off the coast of the Philippines. Okay. I don't want to reinforce them. Okay, spending the rest of the British money. Okay. The other interesting thing is we could land... Could we land British troops in Persia and rail them to the Russian front? I don't think we can because of the way the game rules work. I could be wrong there. Anyway, that was a really good turn. If we take a look at the losses... No, not that. Not that. If we take a look at the graphs, when we take a look at MPPs, the British lost a fair amount of casualties last turn, slightly more than they collected in income. The Americans lost way more MPPs than they collected in income. Geez, 1,000. Must be mostly the air wings in that battle here this turn. So we lost just shy of 1,000 MPPs for the Americans this turn. Again, I'm guessing the vast majority of that were the warship casualties or battle casualties, but we disproportionately hurt the Japanese, who lost almost 2,000 MPPs. The Americans have the income to replace that. The Japanese do not. They have less than 380 MPPs income. They lost nearly 2,000 MPPs so far this turn. in terms of casualties. The Italians lost more than they produced. The Germans are the only ones who are collecting more than they're losing, quite substantially. You can see their income's just over 750, shy of 900. The national morale for them is 113. The Japanese national morale was going up, but this naval victory against them hurt them pretty heavily. They're down to 88. The Americans get a little bit of a bump back up into the 90s. The British are at 91. The Soviets are struggling at 77. The MPPs for the Soviets, they lost 1,600 last turn. Their income is not anywhere near that. And then the Chinese are just not in a good spot. But overall, I think this was a pretty good turn. The Russian front looks dicey. Again, we're strategically reinforcing along the Volga to try and build up another defensive line toward the summer as they kind of roll east. I'm hoping they don't drive into the Caucasus, where a huge portion of our income comes from. We've got a couple of blocking forces there, but not a ton to stop that. We put a bunch of new units here in. We nearly destroyed the 1st Italian Army in Russia. We didn't quite succeed in doing that, but we at least made sure it's not going to be a threat attacking us. Meanwhile, these armored units still continue to attack at like 50% strength and do quite a bit of damage. So that's a thing. Yeah, so that's the situation right now. I'm imagining we'll lose a lot more on the Russian front next turn. I don't think they'll break through and take Moscow. That seems highly unlikely. And I think the Leningrad front is relatively secure. It's the south where things could go south. The south where things could go south pretty decisively and quickly. But, yeah, I think the only other thing to do this turn is to purchase stuff for the Americans, who have not a lot coming. They've got some fleet or some escort carriers and fleet carriers coming later this year. I do think the Americans probably want to build maybe a heavy cruiser. So we'll build one heavy cruiser. We probably could use some destroyers to help counter the enemy. So we'll build a destroyer and a heavy cruiser. The heavy cruiser won't be ready till 43, so that's a ways away. Geez, those take forever. The destroyer will be ready later this year, around the same time as the new carrier. So the naval assets are important for the Americans to maintain this cross-channel invasion. And the next turn, we'll probably go heavy on land units. But with that being said, that's going to do it for this episode. Hope you guys are enjoying. As always, please leave your thoughts down below. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.